Hello everyone, welcome to the video. So today I'm starting new series, Death Before Success, and the first game in the box is Wizardry Online. The game was developed by GameBot and launched to United States and Europe on January 30th, 2013. Then shut down on July 31st, 2014. So it had about a year of shelf life basically before going under. The reason why I make this video about a game that lived for a year is because the game wasn't exactly a bad game or that it did not deserve any sort of success. On the contrary, the game was quite interesting and had a lot of great features and felt, quite fun to play, especially to people that were interested in more challenging group content when it came to PvE. Now, the issues started from the very beginning with advertising. The Sega Online Entertainment, for some reason, decided that it was a brilliant idea to advertise an MMORPG which focuses on player interaction towards a very niche group of players, which were at that time pretty busy with Dark Souls. And so the advertisement started with open world PvP PK permadeath, which both were inaccurate because the PvP was severely punished if it was non consensual, and permadeath wasn't even a thing basically, to a point you had to be dying like crazy to risk losing your character. As such, this did not bring enough player eyes to even consider this game worth their time. The next point was the character creation. When you log in into the game, the first thing you get to do is create your character. This game it was a little bit different, so you created your family kind of thing, your soul, so to speak, since like I mentioned, the game had a permadeath, and if your character dies, at least you still keep the family thing or that soul thing, and then you make a new character for it. Which was weird because in itself that was a very niche thing and not exactly very beloved by players. So I was at the time and even today quite confused why they thought this was a good idea. There was surely much better ways to punish players for dying a lot. Next thing was the character creation itself. It was extremely poor. You did had I think 4 races to choose from. Male and female was available for almost all of them, except for the dwarf and gnomes, which were supposedly a different race, but then they were respectfully the male female for the specific thing. And nowadays it's much easier, it's just a body and then you can be whoever you want, which I think is the best option when it comes to character creation, because the player has a freedom to choose whoever they want to be. As such, it's much better. So, character creation was extremely poor, and that obviously did not bring a lot of trust from the player that is starting out. Quite often, probably made some of them just outright quit once seeing it, feeling like the game is extremely low budget and really not worth the time. Then you get in the game and you have a long cutscene basically, where first you get to see this action-packed cutscene, and followed by a lot of text, which was going slowly and overall was very monotonous. So it was not a welcome thing by players. After all that, if you actually sit through all that, the game sort of begins. You enter the tutorial, basically. You get like bunch of missions that are boring, slow, and way too long. Of course, they were sort of needed. They could have been constructed a lot better, but they're needed because of how difficult the game is. It's not your run of the mill MMORPG where you just go and do things straight away with or without tutorial. It matters not. If you played one, you play them all. This game was not it. Because, for example, you could not regenerate. It more or less had like the fireplace thing where you have to go and heal yourself. Or you didn't level up as you killed enemies, but you went back to the said fireplace to level up. So it was more like a Dark Soul kind of thing. And at that time, it was a weird thing to have an MMORPG where everybody's used to flashy levels up and all colorful and cheerful things. So it was kind of weird. Story wise, it was Wizardry with its own story, with its own lore, and with its own thing happening in the background. So it was not lore poor game. Like they had a huge pool of lore to take things from. And if the game survived, it would have grown into something massive that you would probably be playing even today. The graphics sort of hold out, plus minus. They're not that bad. I've seen much worse looking games from 2013. Could be far worse. Then you have sound. Sound was, well, actually very good. It created very nice dark atmosphere, almost creating a feeling of horror. Like you could get a jump scare as you were playing because of the ambience that was in the background. Besides that, the game had a very unique combat start it all off. Like it had a lot of interesting features, but the combat was one of the more memorable ones since they chose more hands-on approach instead of the well-known tap target that everybody else was doing. And it wasn't just some pointless innovation or just wish to be ahead. They had a point for it. You had to have proper facing, you had to have proper positioning. It wasn't just random swinging at the enemies, you had to hit multiples. You didn't want to have anyone behind you. You were hoping everybody's in front of you, so you receive as little damage as possible and kill the enemies as fast as possible. Since the game had no passive regeneration, and it required quite a bit of effort to actually get your character healed up properly. Either by finding the statues which were equivalent of fireplaces in Dark Souls, or going back to town, to tavern, and paying tremendous amount of gold to get your characters healed. So the combat was very important to the game, and at the same time very innovative part of it, which makes me wonder how well it would have done today. Because when I watch the old videos, it seems quite fun and interesting. So it's pretty unique in that sense. With all that said, another great thing about the game was a lot of puzzles. The game was full of puzzles, traps, and all sorts of mysteries that you could solve in the game. So when you enter a dungeon, you could find the boxes you could open, and there was traps on them, so you could dismantle traps, or you can just take the full blunt of it, which was not recommended, especially in a game where, like I said, you can't regenerate health by just sitting. So you had to be smart. Having a thief in your group usually would have helped. With all this, the game just had the great potential. It could have lived long and it could have been great, but it never did, never got the chance. And I believe if they actually tried and kept the game going for another year or two while updating it, it would have received the level of success it actually deserved. But alas, it was not meant to be so, and as such, it's time to close the lid on this case. Thank you all for watching, and I hope I will see you all in the next video.